We'll need to adopt the agenda with, as revised with those items removed.
Okay.
Remove in front of us.
So the agenda's been revised, so just make sure that when you're adopting the agenda, you say as revised, because we had to pull a couple of items. The public hearing is pulled, and just because we weren't ready, and the Hazel report is pulled because we're not ready. But they're gone from.
I'd like to announce that all board members are present, and I need a motion to adopt the agenda with some revisions.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 5-0. Boy, we got a boisterous crowd tonight. I better turn this
We actually
microphone
turned
on.
on our mics this time.
Yeah, now.
All right, there. I'm sorry. I always forget to do that.
What's that?
And now is the time for public comment. The purpose is individuals wishing to address the board on any non-agenda items which are of interest to the public and within the board's jurisdiction may do so during this time. The board may not act upon items presented during public comment, but may briefly respond to statements made, ask a clarifying question, or refer speakers to district staff or other resources. Procedures for the virtual meetings: to submit a comment in Simbi Gamut meetings, enter your name and email address. The board assistant will review and provide your comment to the board and enter them into the meeting minutes. To submit a comment on YouTube, type your comment in live chat during the live stream of the board meeting. The board president will review and share your comment with the board as appropriate. And with that, I'll give a couple minutes. Nobody's out there? All right, okay. Our first item is a presentation, the EL update. Hello, Cindy.
All right. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Noel. Hi, Cindy.
Won't be able to see my notes. I might have to wing it.
That's why I don't do presentations. I don't do like live on the web because every time I try it, your
There we go.
questions
Okay.
or something.
All right.
Hazel
Well,
report.
actually, yeah, I'm going to wing it. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some information regarding our EL services and what's been going on over the past year. In a couple of different aspects. We're going to talk a little bit about what enrollment's been looking like, the LPAC, what's happening with that, ELD instruction or English Language Development instruction, and then student supports. So to start off, just kind of taking a look at where we're sitting with our enrollment. I always like to kind of get a longitudinal look to see if our enrollment's staying about the same. As you can see, we were dropping for a little while there, starting in about 2017-18, but we've held fairly steady since then, and I think our enrollment actually is back up. This is from census date, but we've had a lot of newcomers enroll since October. And so I think we're probably closer to 37 again.
Nice.
Reclassification information. Reclassification's been very tough over the last couple of years with COVID and online learning, the halting of the state testing, because you have to have 4 specific measures: parent consent, performing at grade level, at level 4 on the LPAC or the English Language Proficiency Assessment for California, and on grade level or basically basic or advanced on the CASP ELA. So without the CASP ELA, we have been able to use some of our local measures in order to try to have a benchmark component for the ELA. But again, with the online learning and over the last couple of years, that's been really difficult to kind of do. But with that being said, what we have in this graph here is what the county totals are, what Robla district totals are, and then what a like district. So one of the things I like to do is that the county always takes into consideration 7th through 12th grade, and we are only TK through 6. And it usually takes 5 to 7 years to acquire language. So a lot of times, we're not looking at reclassification until 4th or 5th grade.
Cindy, mic up closer to you.
Okay. Battery died, okay. So what I did is I looked for an alike district that had similar demographics, similar size, and actually there's a district in Anaheim that's very similar to our district, and so I looked at their data. So you'll notice that the like district is the kind of orangey color there, and there's a couple of places where you don't see it. And the reason for that is because their reclassification rate was under 1%. So even though our reclassification rate is low, as you can see last year, the county really dropped in their reclassification, but we're still kind of holding steady with the like district, and still we're able to reclassify some students. I think we're going to see that number go up.
Oh, I was just curious, is the reclassification kind of different for the countywide because that also includes high school students?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, well, it kind of went back on again, but I have a teacher voice. I can talk loud.
Lost and mom said it.
Oh, okay.
Lost and mom said it. Sorry.
Just can't talk that loud. That would be impressive.
Yes, the county data is all the way through 12th grade.
Got it. And obviously, there's greater likelihood of reclassification. The older students get middle school to high school, so therefore the percentages are higher.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Usually 5 to 7 years to gain a language. So you often don't start seeing a lot of reclassification until at least starting 4th or 5th grade. Like we tend to see that a few 4th graders, periodically some of the lower age students will reclassify because they came in with a higher, English level. But it's really 6th grade that we're really, like, our target is try to get them reclassified before they leave us from 6th grade.
And the county doesn't break down their data by age group?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and the state doesn't do it either. So, yeah, I had to kind of go online into some of the state system and just start randomly looking for a district that might be a K-6 district. Because a lot of the other districts, too, will be a K-8 district.
Mm-hmm.
And so even then, we're not really comparing apple to apples. Yeah, so that's where I found this Anaheim district. So some changes with the LPAC, or the English Language Proficiency Assessment for California. We now have 3 assessments. So the initial LPAC is given to any student who could potentially be an English learner. So every student, but the first time they enroll in a California school, fill out a home language survey. It has 4 questions on it. This home language survey is a state document. It's not a district-created document. So the entire state has the same English language survey with the same 4 questions. And if they fill out any of those 4 lines with a language other than English, it's a flag for us to look, to check, to see if potentially this is an English learner. So the initial LPAC is kind of a smaller version of the summative LPAC, and it's given to, see how they do. If they pass the initial LPAC, they're considered fluent English proficient. They're not considered an English learner. So it's the initial LPAC that determines whether a child is an English learner or not. Once they've been determined they're an English learner, then they're given the summative LPAC assessment every spring to the end of the year, so starting February 1. They're given the summative assessment until they reach the level 4, in which then we can start looking at those other 3 components in terms of looking at reclassifying or redesignating. Those 2 terms are kind of used interchangeably, reclassification or redesignation.
I'm assuming the initial assessment is an oral and written assessment?
It's 4 domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Yeah. The domains, they weigh those 4 different domains a little bit differently. So for example, majority of the students that we see taking the initial is when they enroll in TK or kindergarten. And so they're kindergartners, they can't really read and write yet. So that component has a small percentage in terms of how much it weighs into the overall formula for reclassification, but it does contain all 4 components. Okay. The new assessment is the alternate LPAC. So this is something, if you remember about 3 years back, I kind of shared with you it was coming. So they finally were able to do their pilot this year, or their field test this year. So we administered the alternate LPAC, the summative version, to about 10 of our students. We actually administered it to a few of our English-only students to help ETS kind of get a baseline for them to check the validity of the test. So now they're in the process of setting what the different cut levels are for the different scores, comparing the data that they've been collecting from the state. And it's been difficult again to do this, because in order to do the alternate LPAC, because you're testing your special ed students, or that top 1% of students that fall under the severely cognitive impaired, so it really hits only about 1% of your population. You need somebody who really knows that student to administer the test. So this year what we had to do is train a couple of our special education teachers to actually administer the test. I did administer it to one of our students because it was in the best interest of that student, meaning that the teacher felt that the student would not respond as well with her, because it's a fairly nonverbal student, as they would with maybe somebody else administering the test. So I went over, kind of met the student, established a relationship, but I made him get to know me a little bit, and I got to know him a little bit, and I administered the assessment. What's really interesting in that assessment is there's a component that really the person administering it gives their feedback prior to the administration. So you give information like how verbal the student is. Can the student read? Can the student write? At what level? So then when they're looking at the scores, they have some information about the student themselves. For example, if I have a student that is nonverbal, like the one that I was assessing, I let them know ahead of time in the questionnaire that they give about where that student is in terms of how much language they would produce in any language at all. And then that gives them some information in terms of how they answered the questions, or how much speaking they did as they answered the questions. So it was really interesting to participate in that. This is something that's been long needed, because with that level 4 requirement on the summative LPAC, we essentially had our special education population that could never get reclassified, even though maybe they shouldn't still be designated as an English learner, because they just couldn't pass the full summative assessment. So this is a good step in the right direction. Okay, so now where are our students? So we did not administer the test in 1920. Well, actually, Robla started to administer the test before we went into online learning, and they put a hold on the assessments. So we had some assessments in 1920, but really the full year of administration that we had was 1819. And then last year, the LPAC was brought back, even though the CASP was not. So English learners were administered the LPAC in 2021. If they weren't here, we brought them in if they were on independent study. And we only had 4 students that we could not get in to give them the summative. So we were really successful. The EL teachers worked really hard at that. So I kind of wanted to take a look to see, what was the impact of these 2 years on our English learners. So the graph on the left, or the pie chart on the left, looks at all of our English learners, so all grade levels, that took the summative assessment, that were here to take it in 1819, and then were here to take it again in 2021. So I'm looking at the same student that perhaps took it in first grade, that then took it in third grade. Now the test changes a little, and the cut points change for as you move through the grades. But what was interesting to see is how students did in terms of did they grow in the assessment. So what I looked at wasn't did they go from level 1 to level 2, but actually did they grow in their scale score, similar like on the CASP. So as you can see that 222 students actually stayed neutral. We actually had a percentage of a number of 73 students that decreased in their score, and 89% that showed growth. Then that 89 students. That 25 students were students that I had a score either 18, 19 or a score 21, but I didn't have both. Okay. The graph on the right breaks this down by grade level. When the when the principals talk about their school level plan, they'll give you a little bit more specific for school sites. I just showing you district overall. So what I think is interesting in this graph on the right is that if you look at grade 6, we had a much smaller percentage that decreased than, say, if you look at grade 3. And for me, that's really interesting, is because if we had a score for them in third grade, then we had a score for them in first grade. So these are students that were on online learning for starting second grade and most of third grade. And that seemed to affect that group of students more than it affected your sixth grade students. Which is, in one way, not surprising. Your sixth grade students had at least 4 years of in-school participation, speaking English, 6-7 hours a day, where your third grade students had K and maybe first. Okay, so now that we have this information, what have we been doing in terms of refining our services and our practices for our English learners? So we've been using the scientific method, the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, to kind of look at some of the things that we have in place in Robla. I actually gave the presentation, and Superintendent Reyes referred this back in November, I believe it was. I gave a presentation at the SARA conference, which is the California Educators Research and Research Association. So many acronyms, it's so hard to keep them all straight. So here is what we've been working on. So some of the things that we knew. So here's what. We knew that the summative LPAC was suspended. So we didn't have any summative data as these kids were coming back. We had 2-year-old data, so we didn't really know what really is their English abilities. We knew that the publishers' assessments that we were using, the ones in Wonders, really weren't meeting our needs. They weren't giving us the kind of formative data that we needed. We were getting some data, but it was really kind of hard the way that data came in to kind of compile it and look at like a group, like I did in this previous slide where I was able to do that with the LPAC. And we are also seeing that some of the things that were in the Wonders assessments overlapped what was already being assessed in ELA. So we were getting a lot of duplication of assessment, and we don't want duplication of assessment and spend more time assessing. And the assessments, the way that they're written, they have emerging, expanding, and bridging levels. So they have the same assessment for a unit, and they have it at 3 different levels. So if I'm the teacher of English language development during designated ELD, and I'm trying to give this unit assessment, I have to pull up one assessment for my students that might be still in the emerging level, one assessment that might be for my students in the expanding level, and one assessment that might be for my students that are in the bridging level. So I'm trying to pull together 3 different assessments and then kind of watch as they're moving forward, because you really want to assess them at the next level up. So it's just, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. And then you weren't getting really good, useful data because there weren't a lot of questions in those unit assessments to really get like a big picture. If you missed 1 or 2, you got 50% wrong. So what we really decided is, as we talked about, and this is with the TCI, the Teacher Curriculum Institute, and working with the EL support teachers, was that we really needed some more formative assessment and more work in the area of that listening and speaking. We are getting the writing and the reading from our ELA. The other thing that we talked about was that the EL report card was not quite what we wanted it to be. I looked at some data in terms of how the EL report card was being filled out by teachers, and then I talked with teachers at the Teacher Curriculum Institute about the EL report card itself, and trying to get some feedback from them. And some of the things that they told me was that it was very cumbersome, the way that it was designed. Let me show you it. The way that it was designed was very cumbersome. It was very wordy, trying to look at each. These are each actually a standard, an ELD standard or English Language Development Standard. It just was very time-consuming, very cumbersome, and parents didn't like it. Parents had a hard time understanding what the data was, what the information was they were getting. So we said, okay, we need to look at redesigning that. So what did we do about it? We created a formative assessment called the ALPHA. And Harinder from New Hope referred to the ALPHA, that they were using the ALPHA at the middle school. That was from me and Anjum working together, and he took what we had and brought it forward to kind of have that continuation of services. So he's also using that, but what we did is we had this English language formative assessment that we could give at the beginning of the year to give us some baseline information about listening and speaking skills, and then we can give it again at each trimester. And what it required is for a teacher to have a conversation with each English learner. And then what we did is we created a rubric that aligned to the ELD report card to help fill out some of those components in the ELD report card. This is what it used to look like. And one of the things here was that in the version 1 that we instituted last year while we were online, we were using these Optel, which is a state tool that they were looking at implementing prior to COVID, to kind of create our levels, because we thought that tool was going to come forth. So I said, well, let's use what we think may be coming forward instead of having to redo it. We used those, but what we found was that with these different levels, they were too big to measure every trimester. So we redesigned the Alpha tool. We changed it so that now the Alpha tool catches smaller increments of growth, and teachers have have to be more thoughtful about how they fill out the EL report card. The other part of that was trying to align it, of course, with our assessment pool so that we, again, have that continuation and not an overlap. So what we ended up with is some modifications to the direction. They can use various types of core curriculum or other assessments to generate that conversation. So for example, if I'm giving an upper grade student a fluency assessment, after I'm done giving that fluency assessment, I can keep them for another minute or two and have a conversation with the student about what they read, tell them more, tell me more about it, and then change my lens and listen for their English production skills, as well as understanding their comprehension. For a lower grade, one of the things that PC33, you've heard talk about some of the assessments they're doing with math that are more one-on-one and again involve a conversation. You can do the same thing. You can have that conversation and just flip your lens and listen to not how they respond in terms of providing you with math information, like what do they know about this core subject, but how are they telling you about what they know about the core subject. We redefined the rubric, basically shortened up the language in it. We reordered it so the standards that align with the alpha part are first, and then there's a couple of standards that aren't part of the alpha that are part of the reading and writing component. So we shortened up the language, reordered it, and then we added the ELD standard in the margin on the left. So you see that P2 6.4, that's telling you which standard that actually is. And one of the reasons for that is to help teachers to start aligning and getting to know what the ELD standards are. Then we redesigned the report card. So the report card, instead of looking like the rubric, the report card now looks like the rest of the report card. Just reordered it, and then we added a table, essentially. So an explanation, if your child's getting an emerging score, what does that mean? If your child's getting an expanding score, what does that mean? And then they give a score for each of those standards. So how did it work out? So prior to making those changes, prior to implementing the alpha, when you looked at the ELD report card, about 38% of the teachers were actually filling it out. So we had teachers who weren't even filling it out. And then the teachers that did fill it out, 27% of them just gave the same score for every standard. So basically, if they were an LPAC level 3, they just put a 3 for every standard. And then some teachers did not, 38 completed and 35 did not complete it. After implementing the alpha, we had 80% of the teachers complete it. We only had 5% of the teachers that completed it fill out every standard with the same score. So there was more variation in the scores they were giving, which tells me they were looking at each standard individually instead of as a collective. And then that 15% of the teachers that did not fill in the report card, that's kind of that we had issues with Illuminate and report cards and things populating. So some of the teachers just couldn't access the ELD report card. We've thus, since fixed that issue. So when I do this again I have not done this yet for trimester 2. When I do this again, I'm hoping to not see that there's teachers that did not complete the report card. But if I do see that there's teachers that didn't complete the ELD report card, then I have the access and that information to go to the principals and let them know, hey, you have maybe you have a 5th grade teacher who's new and maybe nobody's explained the ELD report card to them, but now we have a way of kind of making sure that it's actually happening. So our next steps from this, is to continue to work on that professional learning. We had 13 new teachers hired last year. We had a number of teachers hired the year before. I'm sure we'll probably have more. I know we have some retirements coming up, teachers hired again. So, there's this continuous professional learning that needs to happen. Our EL support teachers and our professional learning support teachers are 2 of the tools that we have in terms of helping teachers to learn how to use these tools. And then we also have our administrative walkthroughs and observations to also take a look and see, how things are going in this world, and also to inform us in terms of what other professional learning do we need to do. So now that they're collecting this information, what do they do with the information they have? Like helping them to okay, now you know this about your student. Let me show you how this can drive your instruction to meet them where they are and to take them to the next step. I talk a lot, sorry.
No, you did fine. And I commend, you must have put in a lot of work revising these. And I can see where, as you're going through the initial ones with all that wording in there, it must have taken a big percentage of the time just for the assessment, which takes away from the learning. And I want to commend the teachers too that didn't turn it in. I think that's making a statement because I'm trying to see that in the small print. I'm not a teacher, but it just was hard to understand. And I'm glad to see that they did comply that. So I want to, I don't fault them for not doing that. I think they kind of let us know what we need to do.
It was cumbersome, and they were letting us know it was very cumbersome.
And then the shortened sentences are so much better in the report card, and it's important for the parents to be able to understand for sure.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Well, similar to Trustee Boyd, I want to commend you for first being proactive because you work into this, and it really shows. And when you were talking about teachers not filling it out, my first question was, what are you going to do about that? But you've already focused on that, so thank you for one, bringing it down to 15%, and two, focusing on that additional 15%. How did the parents respond? I didn't hear, or did I miss that, to the new report card?
To the new report card, I have not gotten any feedback in terms of how the parents responded to it. We did have parent conferences, and so the teachers would have had it there available to them. When TCI comes up this summer, that's kind of my opportunity that I'll go back to that group of teachers and kind of say, so we've made these changes, because they help inform the changes. Go back to them and say, so we made these changes, and how do they look, and how is it being received? And then they can let me know if there's more adjustments that need to be made.
Okay. So before, when you were getting, when you said the parents didn't like it, was that through that same interaction, or were parents coming forth and saying, we don't like this?
The parents were letting the teachers know, and the teachers let me know that the parents were kind of responding with, I don't understand this information. I'm not sure what to do with this, or what this means.
Okay, so then no feedback is actually good feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Lyon.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to make one more comment. All this work you're doing and the way everybody's involved shows how we're really committed to the EL students in this district too. I don't know if all districts are like that. I just can't say, but just as long as I can.
All districts are not like that, and Robla is proud of the reputation that we have. That we really do pay close attention to our English learners, and of course that's very much due to the work that Mrs. Lyon does. I also want to mention, she mentioned presenting at the SARA conference, the Research Association, which was a statewide conference, and a few of us took the opportunity to go down and watch her presentation, and it was very well received. And the fact that she was simply accepted to present there, I think, is a very illustrious honor. So it really does exemplify the unique work that we're doing here in Robla, and Cindy specifically. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you for representing us.
Thank you, Ms. Lane.
Next, food service wellness. I didn't see you hide back there. I was wondering if you could do that.
Guys, nice to see all of you.
Adjust the microphone. Thank you.
He's tall. So I just wanted to share with you guys what's going on and what's new in the kitchens. We have breakfast in the classroom, which is new. What kind of new? We're feeding the New Hope Charter School meals. We finally received and installed our new walk-in at Glenwood, which is huge. Our salad bars have returned. We finally brought back the reusable trays. We actually purchased new silverware so that we're not using the sporks anymore. So that was a big move this year. We still have birthday bags, the supper program, and our community eligibility provision space share, which that allows all our students to eat for free at a free rate. So I'm in the process of completing that, which is huge. The supply chain crisis is huge in our district, across the nation, really. We're having a major problem getting food delivered on a weekly basis. I'm continuously talking to vendors to substitute something that can't get, or we're running up to the pizza parlor up the street and asking them to provide us a meal really quickly because we couldn't get the lunch for that day. CDE has recognized this huge issue and has given us extra funding to cover the costs because our prices have really skyrocketed during this time. We're still doing scratch cooking twice a week in the lunchroom. Sometimes we add an extra day in there that the staff could do, and there's just a list of some of the items that we've been doing this year and looking to do more. Breakfast in the classroom has been going well. We serve breakfast every morning to every student, and April we tried some new scratch cooked menu items like oatmeal, apple crisp, and breakfast burritos. And I kind of got some of the, as you can see, we did a dislike and a like in the classrooms, and it looks like that the breakfast burritos were a hit because we actually added salsa packets with it. So that's been a huge feedback from the staff from that. And participation for breakfast has increased. We're not quite sure of the numbers yet. We didn't want to give you guys the wrong data, so we decided to leave that out, but we are working on that. So our revenue for the year, as you can see that our expenditures have been a little higher than our revenues. I don't think all the revenues have come in so far. And also we've been doing a little bit of spending. CDE, well, due to the pandemic, when we were serving the meals to all the kids by the buses, we brought in a lot of revenue. So now CDE has put us on a spending plan, and they said that we have to start spending some of that money or they'll take it back. So we're starting to do that. Gerardo has set up a plan of some items that we want to purchase in the future, and we have 2 years to start spending this money. Because you can see our ending balance is still really huge. And I'm going to bring up Erica Lee so she can talk about nutrition services and student wellness.
Hi, everyone. So, I'm Erica Lee. I'm the coordinator of student wellness and nutrition here at Robla. Let's get started. So, Kathy and I work really closely together. Our food and nutrition components. Oh, I am.
There you go.
Food and nutrition services, we've actually kind of rebranded that so that we can include some of the student wellness work that we are doing. So as part of our nutrition education supports, a lot of these are programs that you've heard of before. They're kind of already pre-established, and others are still very much in the developmental stage. So FFEP, as we call the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, this has been around, I think, 4 years now, and it's fantastic. It really speaks to student exposure of fresh fruits and vegetables. We're delivering an item to the classroom each and every morning, and some of the highlights this year have been just really fun things like yellow dragon fruit and pichu berries and watermelon radishes. So that's always a lot of fun, just simply exposing our students. We also have Harvest of the Month. This is a statewide program that focuses on California-grown fruits and vegetables. We do a lot of education around this, so I sent out a slide deck to all of our teachers each month, and then they're able to do those activities and lessons while they're tasting their produce in the classroom. Something new this year is we've really focused on working with our local farmers. So you can not really see it, but one of those slides down there, we're tracking our food miles for all of our Harvest of the Month products. And so that's been really fun, just letting students know the difference in the environmental impacts and also economic impacts of purchasing food locally. Farm to school student field trips. I could do an entire presentation on every single one of these field trips. It's been a lot of fun. It's really just an opportunity for us to, and this is an idea that really just, Ruben and I dreamed up and has come to life. So every single student in the district is able to go on a farm to school field trip. Had I known that I was going to be planning a field trip for every single student in the district, I don't know, but for our kindergartners, what that has looked like is a school cafeteria tour. That's something that Food Service Director Kathy Moen behind me has led. She gives the kids chef hats, they get to make a recipe, and then just introduce them to the cafeteria, show them, how to distribute their waste, go through the salad bar, and then introduce them to the cafeteria manager and kind of what things look like behind the scene. For our first grade students, we send them to Fiery Ginger Farm. It's a great experience. Here you see students planting lettuce, and then we actually have Fiery Ginger Farm lettuce in our cafeteria. So it's kind of full circle that they're being able to plant something that will be later harvested and delivered to us. We have some field trips that are on hold this year, our second grade and fifth grade. Just with COVID, it really shook things up, and some of our partnerships just had to be, rethought. So, but we previously did a grocery store tour at Viva Supermarket. For our third grade students, they are doing wheelbarrow gardens, and those are growing as we speak. In about a month, we'll be sending those down to the county fair where they'll be entered into the ag exhibit. And then we're going to send our students down there to see their wheelbarrows in all their glory, and then they'll get judged. And then they actually award students ribbons for those. New this year is a fourth grade field trip to PT Ranch. That is a ranch that specializes in regenerative agriculture. So there's a lot of science connections, just teaching kids about carbon sequestration. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And it's been just something new that we're doing. But so far, we've only had one field trip. We have another one tomorrow, but it's going really well. Fifth grade, this is something that I'm hoping that we can bring back. We previously sent students over to Grant High School. They have a fantastic garden over there, as well as a teaching kitchen. So our kids are able to go out, tour the garden for 2 hours, do a lot of STEM-related, next-gen science-related education, and then they come into the kitchen and cook for 2 hours. And then finally, which we're doing right now, is our junior chef assemblies, which is just hands-on cooking for all of our sixth grade students. So we go to all of the schools 2 different times. So the point of all of these, of course, is really just to give students the education. Nutrition education across the board is something that our students really need, and really all kids really need. But it also relates directly back to our food services program, because we could serve the most beautiful, organic, locally sourced meals, but unless they have that nutrition education, they're very likely not going to eat it. So it's kind of a 2-pronged benefit there. And then also, actually, an unintended or unexpected consequence is just the partnerships, because a lot of these field trips, these aren't just ready, this isn't Starbase where they're just ready to receive students and have a whole field trip plan. These are farmers, these are grocery store owners, these are just people that already have full-time jobs and are just really excited to expose our kids to what they're doing. So that's been really fun and has been really beneficial. Fiery Ginger Farm, we work with them all the time on a number of different projects. Beaver Supermarket, we established some great relationships there. And I could say the same about all of these programs. So it's been really great. Another thing that we did this year, started new, is the Food Literacy Center program. I can't speak highly enough about the Food Literacy Center. They have been in Sac City Unified School District for the last 7 years. And I think even before I started working here for the last 5 years, I've been trying to convince them to come to Robla. They do a lot of hands-on cooking. They do a lot of just food adventuring and getting kids excited about fruits and vegetables. And they really specialize with working with kids in low-income audiences. So here in this picture, you can see they made some ramen soup. It was a lesson about sodium, and instead of using flavor packets, students got to choose their own kind of vegetables and seasonings and really experiment with what that might look like. So kind of the other role that I play is I lead our school district wellness committee, and something that is happening this year is our triennial assessment. That is something that is required statewide and is something that I'm in the midst of doing right now. So we are interviewing principals and teachers, some very specific positions here at the district level, all just to kind of see where we're at with our district wellness policy. We're comparing our policy to model wellness policies, and then really taking a close look at the goals that we've made now 4 years ago and tracking the progress on those goals. So the goals that we made now years ago and have been working on for years. The first was really just kind of updating the wellness policy and making sure that all of the new regs were included. So we did that, and one of the goals that came out of that was the competitive food regulations. So that's really just kind of things like birthday parties, fundraisers, and rewards. So I don't know if you remember that. Everyone jokes with me. I took cupcakes away from students everywhere, but really it was very much a decision made with parent input, teacher input, and of course the wellness committee. So as a result, that's where those birthday bags come from. And now it is pretty normal. At first we thought that it was going to be a really big deal, right? But now it's not. We send these birthday baskets. We found that parents really appreciate it. It's something that, you know, they can just pay the $15. Their student gets a nice kind of basket with some Smart Snack approved treats. And we haven't had any complaints or any teachers. So that went really well, and is something we're just kind of in the maintenance phase for now. The other kind of big goal that seemed really big and scary 4 years ago, but we're really making progress on now, is increasing our PE minutes. So I know that this is something that we've talked about with the board, is that here in Robla and many, many other districts all across the state, we are not meeting our district mandated 200 minutes. So we've done a lot of work. We did this PE needs assessment. We have surveyed teachers. We've done a lot of research and data collecting, and now we're at the phase where we're talking to principals, we're talking to the PE team. The PE team just recently presented a plan to cabinet that they thought might get us to those 200 minutes, and now we're in a phase where principals are working with PE team, and we're really narrowing in on how we're going to do this, and we're hoping to start as soon as next year. So that's really exciting that, you know, we've made it. Well, not yet, but we're close. And then lastly, part of my work is always working to increase food security for our Robla students and our Robla families. So these are the forms that this is taken. And again, these are not new programs. It's just important to highlight that this is very much a real issue for our families and something that we as a district are actively trying to address, which I don't think they do in all districts. So it's just something that I'm particularly proud of. Our Kids Farmers Market, we have those at Main Avenue, Glenwood, and Bell Avenue this year. We bring in fresh produce from the Sacramento Food Bank. We run it like a farmer's market, but really that is just a measure to increase the availability of fresh fruits and vegetables that we get into kids' homes. Our weekly parent walking group, hands down my absolute favorite thing that we do. It is still going strong. We are in year 6, which is just wild to me, that parents have and survived through COVID too, which is really wild. But parents come out to Robla Community Park every Thursday and they walk for a half hour, and then afterwards we do a produce distribution, and it's really just a beautiful thing. This is a picture from that. Everybody brings their bags, they line up, and we do a farmer's market style distribution, and it's awesome. And then something we've been doing this year is just some pantry boxes that we get from Sacramento Food Bank. And they've made those available to us as needed, and just periodically before going on break or something like that, we've been including those as part of our distribution for families. We include those as part of our farmers markets from time to time. And again, it's just another way to get some non-perishable items into the hands of our kids and our families. So that is about it all for me. I'm going to bring up Kathy just in case there's any questions or comments.
I just want to say I am obsessed with all the new things you guys are doing in my home, and I know a lot of homes. The kitchen is like the heart of the house, and it's full of education. And I love that you've turned the cafeteria and food service into the same type of thing in all the schools. And I commend you on all your hard work, and thank you so much.
And at your request, I had the pleasure of chaperoning that fiery junior farm, which was a lot of fun. And you're right, they're farmers out there, but the kids had a blast. But you know, I'd like to just about a month ago, a Rotary group, you're familiar with Rotary, and you know, I just want to tell everybody that I've been able to work with Erica on some of these nutrition programs, and it is just tremendous. But it was not just our Rotary group, it was a bunch of groups over there putting together the boxes. And I had mentioned that I was from Robla District across the street. which kind of caught their attention quite a bit, took my picture. But I had the opportunity to go through so much of what we do in the district. And there must have been, I think, maybe 50 people there. And they were just amazed at the farmers market, the food boxes. I talked about the Thursday walks and all, and they just couldn't believe what you were doing. So thank you.
Yeah, if I can chime in as well, I really appreciate the fact that you've demonstrated it's not food and nutrition services isn't just about making sure the kids have a meal, but making sure that they have education about nutrition, exercise, the wellness program, all of that. I'm really excited about, the plan that's being developed to get up to those 200 minutes.
Yeah.
That's really exciting to me. Now, on the nutrition thing, I did have one question. I know that you said that providing that information and that education should help increase the likelihood students are actually going to eat the lunch. Have you found that it's actually made a difference?
To be honest, not. I think a lot of these programs are still too new to see. I mean, that is a slow Titanic cruise ship that we're trying to turn around, and it really does take time. So I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that exists. I have small anecdotes about that. Just from Fiery Ginger, we put those farmers' faces on the salad bar saying, lettuce from Fiery Ginger Farms, and it's so fun to see those kids say, hey, I know those guys, or when Farmer Shane, which they've come out to our schools a few times, the kids recognize them and they're heroes, they're superstars. So then you see kids, just eating, crazy things, raw kohlrabi, things that, aren't even that palatable. They're getting excited about it. So I see things like that happen often, but to make a direct correlation at this time, I can't say that.
I understand that. It's important though to get them open to the idea of trying new and different things. In particular, trying new, different, healthy things. So my hat's off to you.
And the exposure, just when they see it, especially with fresh fruit and vegetable, then maybe next time they're not going to stick their nose at it. Any other questions?
I just say that one thing that did stick in my mind from the field trip to Fiery Ginger Farms was that pigs eat acorns. And the kids love doing it. I didn't know that. But they had a blast finding the acorns to feed the pigs.
I'd like to address the board on a personal manner, and I'm not going to get emotional here, but I wanted to let you guys know that I have decided to retire at the end of the school year. Told myself I was going to do this. I've been here 35 years, started in the kitchen, worked myself up to the manager and to the director. I appreciate the opportunity to work here. This has been my family for 35 years, and I'm going to miss all of you guys. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for all you've done, Kathy. And that's a shock and a surprise. But being retired for 10 years, I wish you the best of luck. But it's just one of those things I never stopped to think that you're going to be gone. You'll be well missed, believe me.
We're gonna miss you.
And of course, we will be celebrating Kathy before she leaves, and we will be keeping her daughter hostage even when she's gone.
All right.
So the last thing we have on presentations is the gay program.
And of course, I have to go after Kathy announces that and gets me teary-eyed because my children know Kathy, Miss Kathy, who used to give them strawberry milks and popsicles after school when they were waiting for me to get off work. So, and they went to the preschool. So yeah, I'm going to miss her. Okay, I'm shifting. Gifted and Talented Education, our GATE program in Robla. Oops. Next slide. Oh, they won't. Interesting. I'm trying Canva out for the first time, and so excuse me, because I put it up so I can see my notes, but now it won't shift for me to continue to see my notes. So I'm winging it again. Woo! Okay. So what I want to talk about a little bit in terms of the GATE program is just some information about kind of what's led us up to 21-22 school year. We have a different look and kind of feel in GATE for the 21-22 school year, and then talking about moving forward. Okay. So when we look at students in the Robla School District for possible entry into the GATE program, we use a matrix. This matrix includes a non-standardized test. It includes teacher referral. It includes about 6 different components. Report cards above 3rd grade, it's their CASP scores. The classroom teacher fills out a referral, as well as the GATE teacher does an interview to see how they feel that student would fit. Because gifted and talented education goes beyond just academics. They can be gifted and talented creatively or leadership-wise. And the way that our program is designed with a 3-4 combo and a 5-6 combo is there's a lot of independent work that happens. And so we want to make sure that the students are going to be successful. So we created this matrix that also allows us to make sure that we capture those underrepresented students in GATE programs. And Robla has been really good about having a very diverse GATE program, and I'm very proud of that. So a couple of things that have been affected that I'm going to talk a little bit about is the enrollment in GATE, the student demographics, and then some of the challenges that we faced over the last couple of years. So as I said, we use a matrix, and not having the same accessibility to students to kind of complete that matrix created a big challenge. One of the main things is that we bring our students in 2nd grade. We do an NNAT, which is a Naglieri non-standardized, non-verbal standardized test to identify potential GATE students. If a student tests superior on that test, that's an indication that they are probably GATE. So that's one of the main criteria that we give to all of our 2nd grade students. So we're not depending on a teacher to say, oh, or a report card, and we don't have any standardized testing yet. So that Naglieri, it was difficult to administer. For one thing, we had to try to get all the students in order to administer that test. And we weren't able to get parents to necessarily bring all the students in. So we were not able to give the Naglieri to all the students that we wanted to. In addition, even a couple of the students that were referred, we were not able to access to give the Naglieri to. So what this means is that we had to go with what we had. So in the past, our GATE program, it has an enrollment that's kind of it. We try to work from the fact that when we enroll those students from 2nd grade into 3rd, because our GATE program is at Taylor Street School, that all the students can come from any of the other schools and then go to Taylor. So we bring them in 3rd grade, and then the idea is that once they're in GATE, we do everything we can to make sure that they're successful and they stay in the GATE program. So the numbers, it's always a number games, right? Trying to make sure that the class balances. So with that being said, it was hard to really get that 12. So our 3rd-4 class is a 24 class, 12 3rd graders and 12 4th graders. So there were some things that happened along with in COVID students leaving. Just as we had declining enrollment in the rest of the district, we saw some declining enrollment in the number of students in the GATE program, and mainly that was because they left the district. But then being able to bring students in, again, we just didn't have the access to students. And we just didn't end up with a waiting list to pull from. So the waiting list that we had and the data that we had, we would have to refer back to that to try to see if students were interested or if we had a potential student to put in the GATE program. And then often when they get into the upper grades, they don't want to leave their school. So if we ended up with an opening in 6th grade and we go to a 6th grader, especially after school started, the parents like, no, they're fine where they are. I don't want to move them now. As well as the fact that they were online, trying to move into the GATE program and be successful in the GATE program when they don't have that foundation of how GATE works and how independent it is. Trying to establish that with students when they are not physically there with the teacher was a challenge as well. So that being said, we had some changes in our enrollment, changes in our demographics. We also had the cancellation of the suspension of the CASP. So we didn't have that opportunity to pull students. Basically what we do is we'll look at when our CASP scores come in, and we look to see if any students are advanced, and whether they're referred or not. We talk to the teacher and say, this student is advanced in the CASP, ELA, and math. We would like you to fill out a referral form because they're a potential successful student in GATE. So not having that also kind of limited our pool. So basically what this all comes down to is we were forced to rely on kind of subjective data, really relying on the teachers to refer students to the GATE program. This is a challenge for teachers because the teachers were online. With the teachers being online, they didn't have as much opportunity to get to know the students, to build those relationships, to really know beyond what they could decipher in their 90 minutes a day of online and the work that was turned in, whether this would be a student that would be a good fit, nor to really get to know if a student had creative abilities or leadership abilities. So that also played into it. So what did that do to our numbers? So, we try to have 24 in third, fourth, with a breakup of 12 third graders, 12 fourth graders. And then as we move to fifth and sixth, those 12 fourth graders move into fifth. We have 3 more openings to add, so we get to 15 fifth graders and then 15 sixth graders. So in 2018-19, we were at 24 and 26. This was with some attrition with kids moving in 18-19. We were able to kind of pick it back up because when we did go into 19-20, we had some students on a waiting list, and then 2021 was the year that we were not here and then kind of here. And so that, again, we had an effect there where we didn't have as many students and we didn't have any waiting lists to pull from. And then going 21-22, like I said, we had a hard time getting those NNAT scores. And again, we had a little bit of an issue. And what you're going to notice I put on 21-22 is the counts. So as you can see in 2021, we had a hard time getting those second graders going into third. So that meant that in 21-22, our numbers are off. We only have 11 fourth graders going forward into fifth grade. And we have 13 fifth graders getting ready to go into sixth grade, which means now we're trying to enroll students instead of trying to fill as they come into third, we're going to try to pull kids that are now in fourth, fifth, or sixth, potentially from other schools. And students and families are just less likely. They still will do it, but we get more of the, I don't want to move my child at this point in time. They're comfortable where they are. So looking at who the students that we have, that first year, one year we were really surprised because the GATE teachers, not this year, the year before, so the kids we pulled the year before, the GATE teachers were like, oh, it worked. These are great. These are GATE kids. This is working out. It's okay. It's fine. And then again, we had that issue with not being able to get the NNAT. So we had 2 years of kind of doing what we can. And we ended up with a little bit of a different demographic. And we also have kids who spent a year at home and are living through the social and emotional issues of COVID. So I'm going to share with you a little bit, and if I can really want to get my slide that would, yes. Okay. I talked to the GATE teachers, and Janice Tran and I, our psychologist Janice Tran, work with the 2 GATE teachers, Terry Mertz and Bob Krongeyer, and we're the GATE team, and we work together to make sure that kids are successful there. So what we found in our conversation is that kids just aren't as ready for GATE as they have been in the past. The teachers are telling us that they're not as ready to work independently, that they have shorter attention spans. It's harder to keep them independently working on a specific project. They have to do a little more shifting around. And they're seeing a little bit more of some social emotional issues with some inappropriate behaviors. They're really noticing this in the third, fourth class, especially. So how does that impact? Well, it impacts the way that they teach. So our GATE teachers are still fantastic teachers, and they roll with it, and they already know how to do differentiated instruction. It's, you know, it's their mode of operation anyways. But they're doing a little bit more of reteaching that they've had to do in the past. They've had to implement some different protocols in their teaching, again, because of the shorter attention spans. And they've been doing a lot more small group instruction instead of small group independent work. It's more like small group instructional work. Some of the comments, though, that Bob and Terry shared with me, Bob Krongeyer and Terry Mertz, are that in terms of the writing, both classes have made progress, but most students started lower than usual. As they've learned that writing has many purposes and that it needs to shift based on audiences and context, they're producing better work. Some students have actually excelled at writing. They use it as a form of self-expression and artistic expression. In terms of reading, this is the first time that I remember having students in 3rd grade who began the school year reading at the 1st grade level. They're all on grade level or close now. We have many 5th and 6th graders who are reading at high school or above. They set reading goals at the beginning of the year, and my top reader has read over 70 books, including nonfiction, classics, and he's become incredible, voracious readers. So as you can see, amazing teachers that have really worked with these kids. Oh, sorry, I just there and there. So again, as I was saying, they meet students where they're at. Some of the additional things that they've implemented is that the teachers have reported that it's a little bit less of a gate feel, and they've done a lot more work in terms of social, emotional, and behavioral work with the students. So some of the things that they've implemented to help with that is they have class meetings that have helped with their social issues. And they have some students who are actually going to intervention, which is not usually what happens in a gate classroom. The on-site therapist has been working with them and helping in the classroom. And you know, some of this has to do with too, you know, they have these high expectations, and so that can play a social emotional role even when you've had a normal year and you're going into this new gate environment from a regular classroom. Kids have always had a little bit, not all kids, but some kids have always had a little bit of an adjustment to make, and you know, we've had to work with the families. They're just seeing a higher, you know, expanded level of that. And then Bob Krongeyer tells me that Terry and I have been broken records in our approach to reminding students that scholarly behavior in the classroom looks, sounds, and feels different than behavior in other contexts. That being said, let's take a look at some of the amazing things that Mr. Krongeyer and Ms. Mertz have been able to do with their students and some of the fun that they've been having. So they had a virtual author talk. This is the 5th and 6th grade class. They met with an author online. They've been working with some lower grades, which has been a great opportunity for them to practice their own skills when they're lower than where they should be, because they're supporting younger students, but at the same time in that supporting the younger student, if they're building their better understanding of the skill themselves that the younger students need to know. They did a suffrage gallery walk. 5th and 6th grade, because it's a combo class, did go to Starbase Science Camp. They were part of a cooking class. I believe Erica set that up, a cooking class, which they had, I heard, had a blast and loved eating what they made. They've done book studies, and they recently had a mock trial, which if you ever get the chance, it is so fun to see. It is so fun to see. Each student has a role. They've got their judge, they've got the bailiff, they've got their lawyers, they've got the plaintiff. It's just really, really neat. 3rd, 4th went to PT Ranch to learn about sustainable farming. One of the 4th grade students, they worked with a contest with mosquito vectors, the mosquito vector, and the student won honorable mention, so won $50 and won $100 for their school.
Right.
And this is the poster that won. As I said, they've been doing a lot of work, especially with the third, fourth class, to kind of meet those students that are at that first grade reading level, having reading buddies, working with kinders and first graders, practicing reading at that lower level without it being a stressful situation in terms of feeling like, oh, I can only read at this level. No, they're reading to somebody at that other student's level. And that's what I have for GATE. Any questions?
It's not surprising the challenges after that 2 years at all, but it sounds like Mr. Krongire and Mr. Mertz really have done it, and they are dynamic teachers, and I can. Both my children went to the GATE program, and I understand that initial having to fit in, and after 2 years online, that's really got to be. I can't even imagine how it's going to have to be to do that. I'd like to add real quick a little personal thing. Both my children are near 50 now, and about a month ago, my daughter, I don't know who came up with it, but had a reunion of that GATE program over on Garden Highway, and one of her students, I had my 20th annual Easter egg hunt over at my place, neighborhood Easter egg hunt, came over too, and it was just such a thrill to see them get back together, and one of their teachers was over there too, so it was pretty neat. So,
Oh, that is really neat.
but yeah, I always had a special feeling for the GATE program, and
Yeah, I think, as Bob and Terry, as you said, they're a really dynamic team. They work very hard. I think Bob being involved in the Area 3 writing project has just been, super beneficial. He's brought a lot of information to the district, not only just for the GATE program, but in the district in general. So yeah, real assets, those two teachers.
a lot of patience too. Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to our one and only action item. Approve the MOU between Sacramento County Office of Education and Robla School District regarding implementation of the Sacramento Healthy, is that HEART or HEART? And Mind Collaborative of any given child. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Moving seconded.
Yeah, this is just well, that's very loud. This is a regional entity that supports the arts, and Robla has had a long-standing relationship with them. Our lead art teacher, Amanda Johnson, meets with the team regularly to work on making sure that Robla is getting access to any kind of arts activities that are happening in our region. One of the exciting things that's happening soon is that we'll be bringing in some local artists to work with some of our classes based upon teacher requests. So this MOU gives us access to things like that.
Great.
Any comments? I'd just like to say, reading through this, I was a little bit surprised at all that art is addressing that I didn't know about. For instance, some of the social emotional projects, and I've always been supportive. I think art is great. Art and music are the two really most important outside the regular programs. But it was pleasing to see what it's doing. So with that, I call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Carries 5-0. With that, do I have any requests from board members for future items on the agenda or reports?
Nothing at this time?
Nothing at this time.
Nothing at this time.
Nothing at this time.
And I've got nothing either. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.